Painting outside is a lot of fun. We have a lot to choose from. We have cities and villages and oceans and farms, and it's really a pretty amazing feeling to be standing out in the middle of nature and to be able to stay put for a couple of hours and be one with it and try to translate its beauties. Walk around a little bit, do a variety of little pencil sketches, do some no-tans, figure out what your composition is going to be, and then set yourself up. I've chosen this beautiful barn behind me. I like the variety of the white doors and the green grass. Love the trees in the background. Start off somewhere where you're safe and you feel comfortable and you're not going to be interrupted too much, and you can sort of just get into the zone of it. We're in a beautiful, beautiful farm in Ringgoes, New Jersey today. I chose a spot that puts me in the sun, so I have a plein air umbrella here to make sure that I'm in the shade, my palette is in the shade, and my canvas is in the shade. Believe it or not, you can get a little sunburn on your eyeballs from looking at a white canvas. If you mix everything up in bright sun and you paint in bright sun, then you'll get it inside and it won't look nearly as bright. Keep yourself in the shade for the sake of your painting and your skin. Lovely barn sketched out, and I made a couple of compositional decisions that I just want to point out here. So we want a variety of line and shape. We don't want both edges to be the same. So even though there's a taller tree here on the edge, I opted to leave that out because I have a tall tree over here. This is the beauty of composing, and this is the beauty of painting. There's certain elements in nature that we need to pay attention to, but we get to compose it, and that's really part of the fun. So don't be afraid to move things around to build a more beautiful, harmonious painting. That's what it's our job to do. I made the barn on the right slightly smaller, and I may choose to leave that out, but I like the cast shadow that it creates. It just adds a more kind of an interesting element to the ground. The driveway that comes in here, I have sort of brought it out here to the right because I want it to take you into the picture, and you'll see as I get along in the painting, I'm going to sort of neutralize the road as it goes out so that I don't run someone's eye out of my painting. It's my job to keep them in the painting. So this might bring them in, but I'm going to use something to draw their eye up and around and through the clouds and into the barn and circle them around like that. That's the fun finessing part that we get to do. The other thing to point out is that we have some beautiful clouds today and some bright sun. So I have laid in my light and my shadow, and I am going to stick to that pattern no matter what the sun does. I have my light and my shadow. It's our job to choose a motif. What are we painting? And especially when we're outside, there's so much to choose from. So what is your painting about? Is it about the foreground? Is it about the barn? Is it about the background? Is it about the mountains? Whatever you choose to paint, make sure that is your main focal point. And there are a couple of things that we've covered in composition. You saw this earlier. Your main subject matter is not going to be smack in the middle of the canvas. These are compositional elements. You might also notice that on my palette, I have left my transparent earth orange probably in the studio when I showed you all the easels. So I got out here today and I didn't have that. So I toned my canvas with a combination of transparent orange, which I happen to have in my box, and a little transparent blue. You don't want to tone your canvas with anything that has white in it. So these transparent colors are really a beautiful thing to tone the canvas with and to sketch it out. So, okay, let's paint. I have mixed my colors. I have light and shadow for each main area, which I'm sure that I'm going to have to adjust as soon as I actually get it on the canvas here. But it's nice to have a big pile to start with. Let's start with my darks. This color's a little dead. I'm going to adjust it early on. Give it a little more juice. Well, it's pretty dark. It's pretty dark. I'm going to lighten it already. gonna wipe that out. Color just looks dead. It's a dead looking color. I don't like it. I don't want to start my painting with a dead color. Oh, that's a little bit better. That's a little better. Big shapes. We started with the big shapes when I sketched this out. I'm not going to noodle anything right now. I'm just going to lay in my light and my shadow. There's that shadow. The back half of this barn over here is about the same value as the front part. So the shadows should be equal in value, but maybe a slight color shift. We'll go with that for now. I'm going to lay in some of the shadow in my trees back there that I have chosen to reshape for my compositional purposes. Well, that's a little dark. I want a little bit more green, not so gray. You hear the birds? This is why we paint outside. It's like amazing to just stand out here and listen to the earth for a little while. That's what it's all about. What a lucky girl I am, huh? What a lucky girl we are. What lucky kids we are. I have my shadow in the trees that are in the background, and I have this tree over here on the left-hand side. That tree is a little bit closer to me, so the shadow in this tree, they're not going to be quite as cool as the shadows in that tree. So I just warmed them up a tick with my red. I'm going to warm them up a tick more and get it a little bit closer to a brown. And then I have my trees way off in the distance down there. I'm going to cool that way down. Just kind of suggest them back there, way off in the distance. This barn is casting a shadow onto my lawn, so I'm going to drop that shadow in. I'm going to drop some of this shadow color from the lawn just along the edges of the driveway here. Just little suggestions of it. I want something nice and dark for this, the interior of the barn door here. Might even be too dark, but we'll see. We'll play with it. And there's another door here. We talked about this earlier, and you see it more when you're outside in a landscape. Your darkest darks and your lightest lights are going to be closer to you, and then as you move into the distance, that the color, the intensity, and the purity of the color interact with the atmosphere. So the colors become a little bit more neutral, and the value scale from dark to light comes a little bit closer together. So anything that's way up front here, I'm going to have my beautiful, bright, warm colors, and then as it moves into the distance, that range gets a little bit closer together because it interacts with the atmosphere. Okay, I'm going to drop a little light. I'm going to drop a little light into my painting. Let's see if I came close with the color of this barn. That's pretty close. I might, for the sake of, my painting, little bee, I'm gonna add just a little bit more lively, because I can. The mad orchestrator of my painting. Big, simple shapes here. I'm not noodling anything, just laying in big, strong shapes. Sometimes for compositional purposes, we just choose to leave something out. That's like really okay. A great, strong painting is as much about what you leave out as what you put in. So this side of the barn is in light, but it's not receiving as much direct light as this side of the barn. So we're gonna neutralize this just a tick, so that it's on a different plane. My roof is brown, but it is in light. So I mixed up a color here, but I could tell just by looking at it, it's a little dark. So I'm gonna just go ahead and lighten it. And sometimes when you're out in nature, it's hard to determine what a color is. So there's you could take your your hand and create a little hole and look through it, just that piece. And sometimes it helps block everything else out. You can find one of those little linoleum samples that hang on a nail, so it's got a little hole, and you just get a neutral gray one, and you hold that up to whatever the object is, and it isolates the color of that object, and sometimes that makes it easier to see. So that's another little outdoor trick. This roof is a perfect example of trying to figure out what color is that roof. It's brown, but it's in light, and it's receiving a lot of light. That's getting close, but it's probably a hair too dark. I'm gonna try to, first I'm gonna lighten it with yellow, and if that doesn't work, I'm gonna add a little bit of white. Yeah, we'll go with that. Get my color, I load my brush, I lay it in. At this point in the painting, there's no noodling going on. Don't get yourself caught up in one little spot. Just get your big shapes in there. Start to think about brushstroke and direction of brushstroke here. I want to pull the eye around in this direction, have it come out toward me. The road is kind of a bluish gray. Too dark. When I analyze this, the lights in my grass up front are a little too close to what I have in the back there. So I lightened it and I warmed it to bring this area of lawn forward more. Now there's definite variety between the light in the lawn here and the light in the trees back there. The sky is the source of light, so it's pretty much always the lightest thing on your painting. The exception would be snow and man-made buildings, painted white. Other than that, it's where all the light's coming from, so it's gonna be the lightest thing. So I'm laying in my nice light sky, and then I'm gonna drop in my clouds. Clouds move on you, so you have to choose where you want them, compose them, lay them in there, and leave them there, even if they move around on you. And even the base of the cloud is likely never going to be as dark as you think it is. So we're going to keep that nice and light. I'm going to use this grayish purple that I mixed up for my road, and I'm going to lighten it dramatically, and I'm going to use it for the base of my clouds. See how dark that is? When you paint your clouds, remember that the light source is coming from one side, so one side of the cloud is going to be darker than the other. So all your big, puffy, yellowish, bright clouds are all going to be kind of on the same side, right? Just like your light and shadow on a building or on an object. I'm at the point where I've laid in my light and shadow here, and I want to analyze my painting. When I look at it, I like some of the things that are going on. I see a couple things that are kind of bothering me. The shadow in my barn is too dark. The value range between the light in the barn and the shadow in the barn is just too extreme. So I need to adjust that. This barn that's off to the right, which right now is just this kind of a big, ugly green blob, that needs more, I need to adjust that color. And then, once I do those two things, I feel like I'll be at the point where I can start to finesse this. I can start to bring, a color from here into other areas. then I can start to bring the painting to the finish. I don't want to even start to bring a painting to the finish until I have these basic elements down, because once those are down, you could walk away from the painting, it's done. Or you can move in and finesse a little bit more. But let's get these basics of light and shadow correct first. You know what that means? It means I'm gonna wipe out. Wow, even just wiping those two things out, can you see how already it looks better? So that's how you evaluate your painting. Take a look at it and think, oh, what is bothering me? That was bothering me. All right, so I need a new color and value for the shadow in this barn. Let's see what I come up with. There we go. There we go. Let's wipe out everything that definitely was not working. So this is an orange. It's neutralized with a little bit of that purple that I had mixed up. I'm gonna add that same color over into this barn, which is also in shadow. I'm just suggesting this barn. That's not a focal point at all. I take some of this same purple that I have in the road, and I'm gonna use it for this sliding door rail. I'm going to eliminate this white window because it's kind of not important, and compositionally it's in my way. I'm going to vary some of the elements in the barn here, make them a little more interesting. This dark shadow here is a little too dark. I'm going to take this same new color that I mixed up here, and I'm going to neutralize that shadow a little bit. The value scale between that dark and the light of the building was too intense. The value range. I've got the light and the shadow shapes the way I want them. I have my color notes adjusted. I'm happy with the start of it now. That one little shift made a huge difference. So now I want to go in and I want to pay a little bit more attention to my brush work, what I want to draw the eye to, and I can do that with color and sharp edges. Bring it along just a little bit further. Your imagination sort of dictate what you want people to look at, how you want to lead an eye, you know, where you want to create some poetry. You got to have that solid foundation, which we started with, and that's what we've done with all the work we've done up till this point. And now we want to get into a little bit more of the finesse that speaks to speaks to your personality and the way you manipulate the paint and your brushwork, which is just like your handwriting. It's like your signature. I'm going to break up this line along the bottom of the barn so it's not so straight. Soften that line. So to create the gray in the clouds here, I took this same grayish purple that was in the road and I lightened it a little bit to put it into the clouds. And now I want to add a little variety into this road. I want to keep it the same value because the value structure is there, but I want to play with the color a little bit. So I mixed up a little bit of pink, and I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to drop it into the road. I'm going to put a piece of it in there. It's the same value as the purple. I want to move the eye along. I do that with little pieces of color, little pieces of paint. David Leffel, who's a great painter, talks about how the paint itself is beautiful. It's just our job to arrange it properly on the canvas. I always liked that. I kind of like the suggestion of that. It pulls some of that color from the barn. I don't want to overdo it. Sometimes we'll put a mark down and we're like, oh, that's brilliant. And then you put mark, and then all of a sudden it's not so brilliant anymore. So subtlety is important. Don't overdo it. Kind of like where that's going. Let's put a piece of it up here. This shadow's too dark in my mind. I like that better. This line is a little too intense. So I'm going to take my brush. It's a clean brush. It's kind of dry. I'm just going to hit the edge of it. Soften that. Otherwise your eye goes right there. Same thing with this line. It's a little too dark. I'm going to take my brush, get something somewhat close to that color. Although the edge of this is really hit by the sunlight, so we could shift it just a little bit with a tick and soften that line. It's an old barn. There's gray and there's this kind of peachy color. I can put a little bit of that gray in there, but I want to make sure it stays the same. I want to keep it all the same value. So I'm going to go into this gray, maybe some of what I put in the cloud, and I can put a tick here and here, here and there. That's too much, I think. I need to lighten it a little bit more and maybe keep it a little bit closer to that orange color. Or peachy color. Too dark. have a red rake over here, which is beautiful. All the colors in this painting are really pretty subtle and organic. And I'm just gonna drop that red in there because I think it's beautiful. I don't have to paint every piece of that rake. I just have to suggest the rake. So I have just a little piece of red rake in shadow and a little piece of red rake in light. And then a couple of dark elements right under it, and it'll be done. So I'm just gonna pop that in there. Starting to rain, which will happen, and so I'm gonna wrap this up. I have a reference photo and I'll finish it in the studio, but I really like where it's at. I like what we got in there. It's got some romance.